everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Trove Let's Play. We are beginning our post-launch recap of the entire game. What's in the game so far as of launch. And, just recovering old, out-of-date knowledge in my previous videos and just sorta just refreshing our memories as to what this game is all about. Today's episode is going to be all about the classes, a class guide for all the classes put together. You're not going to go too in-depth, just sort of showing all the abilities and also giving my opinion of when you should use a class or what it feels like to play each class, and maybe like a general sort of like strategy sort of thing if a class calls for that. So before we do that, I do want to make one quick announcement, though, is that I have just received my Balefire Wings keys for the first time, so twitch.tv/edityedster. You can get yourself some of these if you're lucky enough to win one of our giveaways. I also give away other things on stream, other Trove things, mounts and hats and that kind of a thing. I'll maybe even give away some shadow gear at some point. But I wanted to announce that as long as I have keys for the Balefire Wings, I'll be giving them away. So, alright, let's begin with our class guides. We're starting with the Knight. I'm going to go in sequential order in which they were added to the game. The Knight is a melee class using the sword, a physical damage class using the sword, is sort of, it was the first, as far as, I don't know if there was ever a time where there was only a Knight, or if it was the first alongside the gunslinger. I'm not really quite sure. Also, I just want to mention I am in the lowest level world here, so mostly just for scenery, so these enemies will not be very hard to meet for us to defeat. Its left click simply swings the sword. It is that simple. It's passive, that's the word I'm looking for, is that basic attack will do significantly more damage after being hit. You can see the sword gets a glowing VFX, and the hit is more powerful. You just have to trust me on that, because it's one hit for these guys either way. Okay, the alternate fire, the alternate fire is a AoE hit, very hard-hitting ground slam. I think it does a significant amount of knockback. You can also see that it does a pretty good amount of block damage as well. You can actually tear down a wall with that, not a dungeon wall, but a wall with it, if you do it enough. The number 1 ability is something, when you hold it down, it prepares a sort of spiral thing here, very cool VFX. When you release it, it dashes forward, dealing damage along the way. And then we have the... Wait a second. Am I doing this out of order? Basic attack... Oh yeah, they are out of order. That's weird. I was wondering, I'm pretty sure this ability used to stun. It's killing them right now, but I think it does. The secondary M2 Smash deals knockback and briefly stuns all enemies in a cone in front of the Knight. Yeah, that would be this ability. I don't know why they're out of order. And then the charge is the one that just deals damage in front. Okay. Iron Wheel heals the Knight and reduces incoming damage by 75% for 7 seconds. So that's pretty sweet. Healing the Knight, I believe it said... Whoa! Spikes. I believe it said fully heals. Yeah, it fully heals... Okay, I can't even... My health regen is so high that in this world I can't even take damage. But if you're getting low on health, you can hit number 2. Number 2... I'm hitting number 3. Number 2, you'll get this little square around you, and you will, as it says, take reduced damage and heal. So best way to fight with the Knight, if you ask me, is to wind up a charge first and foremost, and charge in, do some damage, swing your sword around until you get hit, and charge in, right? And then you can do some stuns and do some damage, right, using the smash and then basic attack. When you get low in health, because the boss is wrecking you, pop your number 2, and then don't worry about taking damage anymore because you're taking so little of it at that point, and start actually trying to get hit, because if you do take damage like that, you will actually do more damage with your basic attack. That's kind of the trick. It's basically like, you know, you can tank is the idea. Okay, and let's move on to the gunslinger. The gunslinger, which I love my gunslinger. I haven't actually sorted out any particular style for him. It just so happens that it's a clown with a rubber duck on his head with the heart costume, which is kind of funny. Anyways, so gunslinger, second class in Trove. We have magic damage this time, based on gun equipments. Okay. So that's awesome. Now, what's the deal with the abilities here? So let's talk about the basic. While in the air, damage dealt to enemies decreases the speed of the gunslinger's descent. Dealing damage can cause the next charge shot to be powerful without any chance of charge time. So that's referring to the alternate fire. Let's talk about the descent. I believe this was an addition added to the gunslinger a while after its addition. I think when I played the gunslinger in alpha, most of all, I don't remember ever seeing this. But if I hit that guy, as I did, you saw I hung in the air quite significantly for a time. And that's pretty awesome. So this allows you to do things like get a bunch of jumps and stay pretty high above the air and actually float above enemies while staying out of range. That's a pretty good way to run the gunslinger. Okay, next let's talk about that alternate and the rest of the second half of the passive. So if I hold right click for my alternate fire, you will see that it charges up. There's 2 rings. There's like 3 stages. You can tell by the sound. Womp, womp, womp. But there's 2 rings. And that charges a charge shot, which does a lot more damage, has a higher area of effect, and actually does a pretty good amount of block damage as well. So, charging up this though while you're under fire and you're not doing any damage, you can't really hang in the air. So that's gonna take a while. So, you could what I would do is when you're about to start a boss fight, do the charge, stay out of range before aggroing the boss or getting too close, then do the charge, and let it go. Once you've hit him, get up in the air and do the hang, like that. Now, while you're doing your basic attacks, as you actually just saw, if you hit someone with basic attacks, let's see if we can get it to happen. These guys are pretty weak. There's a small chance of you getting a charge for free. Probably should just be in a slightly harder world. There we go. Charge for free, right there. So you don't have to charge. So that's why, you know, doing a charge at the beginning, taking the time to actually charge is good, but then from then on, you don't really have to do that because you'll get a charge anyways. Now, so clearly doing a lot of damage, especially when the bosses and stuff are higher level than you, kind of depends on you throwing downrange those huge charge shots. But in order to do that without getting hit, you need to make a bunch of hits with your basic attack, because your basic attack is what determines basically how well you're doing. The more basic attacks you hit, the higher the chance that you'll get one of those to randomly give you a charge shot, right? So then you use run and gun, which is the let's actually talk about the ultimate next. Then we'll use the run and gun, which is the gunslinger's movement speed and attack speed is increased, and you're able to run while attacking. So you notice if I run forward here and then I start shooting, my guy slows down to a walk. If I hit number 2, you get this VFX to show and the speed does not decrease while attacking. My movement speed is much faster, as is the attack speed. So you can use that to actually throw so many, to just continuously throw basic attacks at a large boss. As you're doing that, you will be getting quite a few charge shots if you're actually making those hits. So that's actually a huge spurt of damage, and your movement speed is up so you can stay away from the boss. Then there's the number 1 ability, which we haven't talked about yet, which is the charge shot, which looks like this, and it gets you up in the air. I find that I always have enough jumps that I don't do that, because when a bunch of melee enemies are swarming on you, right? Okay, so here's the deal. This cornerstone here is where all the bosses are. Charge up your shot, right? They haven't aggroed yet. Shoot it out there. Now they're aggroed on me. I've damaged them a bunch. I'm shooting them. The idea is that when they start to swarm around you, you can do some AoE damage and get into the air out of their way, then slow your descent up here, and that's excellent if you don't have a lot of jumps. The only problem is that in order for you to actually make contact with this hit, you actually have to take some damage yourself, because you know, you've let them get close enough for you to do that. So if you're in like a world that your character can't handle too well for one reason or another, then just get a bunch of jumps and do the jumps beforehand. That's the safer way to do it. But you don't get to actually make hit with this number 1 ability. Once you're up here, hit number 2, throw some serious shots down there, all the while throwing alternates while every time you get a random charge. You'll deal a bunch of damage, and that is a great way to go. Lots of fun playing the gunslinger class. Alright, let's move on to the Fey Trickster. I actually have to get my staff from, I think, my Ice Sage. Just gonna get my good gear. Now you can see this is another thing to do when you have gear. I'll go over foraging again since the UI changed and the actual mechanics have changed. And let's go to a slightly harder world. I will go over that all again in a future video, but you can see that I basically look for the same thing in my gear. I'm not far enough along in Trove to basically, let's do this world. I'm not far enough along. Oh, did I ever switch out of the Ice Age again? Back to the Fey Trickster? I think I did. I'm not far enough along in Trove with my gear to be able to say tailor gear per class. I instead focus on one set of gear for staff users, one set of gear for swords users, one set of gear for gun users, and one set of gear for bow users. And that does me pretty well, because it's not that much gear to make, and you basically, unless you have a particular strat that you're looking for, you basically want the same thing all the time anyways. So, okay, looks like things are still one hit. Oh well. So, alright. What are you looking for? Well, you're looking for usually damage and health, right? Those are the things you want. Maybe health regeneration. So if it's a magical class like the Fey Trickster here, which is a magical staff-wielding class, perhaps you want a staff with magical damage and health. That's really... The rest of the stuff is nice. Having some jumps in there is really nice. But until you have so much flux and Eyes of Cthulhu that you can actually tailor class-specific sets of gear, I wouldn't bother. So, for the knight, I forgot to mention, for the knight, good stats to have on your gear would be, health, so you can take a bunch of hits and buff your basic attack, and physical damage. For the gunslinger, attack speed is actually really good, because the more throws you make down at your enemies, the more contacts you hit with your basic attack, the more chances of you getting a free charge shot, right? So that's a good thing to have. Fey Trickster. Alright, so the idea behind the Fey Trickster is that it is a ranged class, but it's pretty slow, much slower than the Gunslinger. When you teleport with the right click, you'll leave behind a decoy, which will take the aggro from nearby enemies. That's the basic idea. So let's talk about the passive, which is this. If the Trickster has taken no damage for 2 seconds, their basic attacks deal bonus damage. So you can see that I'm launching these fairly large balls down at the enemies, and they're pretty much a one-hit kill like that. Okay, but what if I take damage? That is because I haven't taken damage in the past 2 seconds. If I get hit, you notice a little VFX, and now I have a little pea shooter. Okay, 2 seconds isn't very long, so we're going to have to be quick to really observe the change in damage. Hit, and you can see I'm shooting this little pea shooter now, and then it goes bigger again. You get a little VFX when it goes up. So the idea with this guy is don't take damage if you can, because his basic attack is pretty high damaging. I mean, it's really a good basic attack if you can keep it from not getting debuffed. So the way you do that is with these decoys. These are all not mushroom enemies, they're just mushrooms. If I aggro this spider, and I teleport away, the spider will stay. I actually got hit there. I didn't time it right. But the spider will stay behind to defeat the decoy, and we are safe, free to use our basic attack and other attacks on him. So, another thing that's just really good, which is a pretty straightforward ability, is actually the glitter bomb. There's a shiny bomb which deals damage in an area and knocks enemies back. So it's just a thrown. It's just a I missed. It's just a thrown attack that does quite a bit of damage. And with the Fey Trickster, you can actually throw them pretty quickly, a good number of them. So one of the ways that I will often start a fight is stand somewhere where the enemies can't reach me, throw a barrage of glitter bombs down to do a lot of damage, and then wait for my energy to regen. The reason why you need to wait for your energy to regen is because you want to be able to teleport. If you're stuck without being able to teleport, you're going to get hit, your basic attack's going to do nothing, and you're going to be stuck getting wailed on and not being able to throw any damage on your enemies. The number 2 ability is an interesting one. It looks rather cool, but it's kind of unclear to me if you really need to use it that much. Sometimes I'll start a fight like this, though. Press number 2, you get 3 stabs. These are decoys that do take aggro from enemies, I think. But they also shoot enemies. I was kind of hoping they would shoot that spider, but they decided not to. So you can sort of use that. Maybe if you do a decoy and everyone's over there attacking, hit number 2, spawn onto the 3 stabs rather, and have them start hitting enemies, and then you can stand behind it so that you really won't get hit. You got a lot of lines of defense. Toss some glitter bombs over there. Basic idea: don't get hit. So energy regeneration and max energy are pretty good because you really need to your basic attack can have you do pretty well on your own. You just need to. Okay, they did not take the aggro, but then they killed him. You just need to make sure that you always have enough energy and that you get good enough at the timing the teleports to never get hit, because your basic attack can do pretty good on its own. Oh wait, forgot to change class at the cornerstone. Okay, so next class we talk about, I believe, is the Dracolyte, the next class that was added in Trove. Yep. So actually, sorry, we gotta go back and we gotta get the Fey Trickster stuff, because this is another staff-wielding class, but it is very different than the Fey Trickster. So the Dracolyte is a magical damaged class with stabs again, but it's a flamethrower. It's not really a ranged class at all. It's a very close range class, for the most part. So you can see that he has a little dragon friend who helps him, and actually that is the passive. The Dracolyte moves much faster through lava. That's just a little note, and takes less damage from other Trovians. Oh. Okay, I guess that didn't mention the part about the little dragon. I was wrong. That's its alternate fire. So, let's see. This is, I can demonstrate this to you here. So, lava normally slows down a Trove class quite a bit. But with a Dracolyte, he actually moves very quickly through them. Oh, wait, sorry. I still have a speed buff from... Oh, look, that's stacked. I had a speed buff from my flask, and it stacked together. That's why it was going so quick. But he still goes very quickly through lava. Oh, no, that is the speed buff from the lava. Interesting. I think that behaves quite differently than it did originally. I never even noticed they changed that, since I rarely like to touch the lava anyways. And I was taking damage, but it was taking less damage. Okay, so... Dracolyte. Use the staff for fire damage. You can see that as I did that, my little guy got kind of fatter and now has some fire around him. That would be your number 1, your alternate fire, rather Spitfire. If charged, your familiar releases a fireball, the familiar is the little dragon, that deals damage over a small area. Damaging enemies with your basic attack will charge up your familiar. So, if I right-click, now you can see a fireball get shot out, right? And that actually does a little AoE burst of damage. So if we continue on here, okay, he's charged again. Now we aim at this guy, shoot him, and that's actually a pretty good little buff of damage, which is nice. So basically, the idea behind those 2 attacks, the basic and not, is that you get in close enough to spray people with the fire, and you will, if the boss is strong enough and stood strong enough, you'll get periodically, while flaming them down, you will get a charge on your familiar, and you just right-click. It's pretty much as simple as that. Just holding left click and then hitting right click every now and then. Now, your other two things. There's Burnt Offering and Avatar of Flame. Burnt Offering is your number one ability. It throws down this little bomb, basically. It's a little idol, as it's called. And if you hit it 4 times, so let's see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, that time it only took 3. Well, anyways, it does an AoE of damage, and I do not believe that it breaks. Oops. Oh, come on. I do not believe that it breaks blocks. Yeah, it does not. Okay, so that just does area. So while you're burning people down, periodically hitting right click to toss out your familiar's fireball, you should also throw down some intermittent bombs, because those will deal a great bit of area effect damage. And that's basically the strat with the Dracolyte, and we haven't even talked about the ult yet. The ult is pretty cool. You transition into a giant dragon, and your movement speed is increased, and what else? Okay, for 10 seconds, increasing movement speed, stability, which is how much you negate people's knockback. So if you're fighting like a punch bot with massive amount of knockback and you have a lot of stability, it won't actually knock you back that much. And the damage done by the basic attack, while reducing damage taken by 50%. So it's sort of like you become, rather than becoming this thing that just throws a bunch of damage down, you become this thing that's kind of a tank and throws a bunch of damage down. But it's only for a brief period of time. So basically just pop that whenever you have a big fight coming up, and continue doing what you were doing before, right? Throw some things down, do your basic attack as your familiar gets charged. I know it's hard to see him. Actually, is he inside you? Oh, he's in your hand now, but he still does get charged up. And it's basically the same. Alright, so good things for the Dracolyte. I would highly recommend just magic damage, and because you're throwing your abilities down so much, energy is good, health is good. There is no buff, unlike some of the other classes we've seen. There is no there is no benefit to taking damage for the Dracolyte. Unlike for the knight, where it buffs your basic attack or something like that. So just, I guess, be aware that you're a tank, but you're not getting buffed for doing things that tanks do generally, I guess. Okay, next let's talk about Neon Ninja. Oh, you know what? Let me just, to avoid confusion, let me switch to a different costume. That is actually a modded costume. Made by a friend of the streams and channel, Monster Ant. I helped out with some VFX. I wanted to add costume, get on the samurai costume, and we'll change the sword to be the samurai sword. Okay, so this is the Neon Ninja. The Neon Ninja is back to a sword class now. It is so physical damage. Oh dang it, the mount is also modded. Just get one of these guys. Okay, so when you swing your basic attack, you can notice that he swings his sword very quickly and in like a wide variety of patterns that you'll get used to after a while, and sort of expect where the sword swing is going to happen next. The passive is that the Neon Ninja attacks can generate up to 3 throwing stars, which are thrown when used the basic attack while in stealth mode. Okay, so before we talk about that passive, we should probably talk about what stealth mode is in general. It does pretty much what you would expect it to do as something called stealth mode, and makes it so that you sort of lose the aggro of your enemies. So here's this guy, he's on to me, we go into stealth mode, they attack the little decoy for a second, and then they lose aggro until I become visible again. You can see I am see-through, and my movement speed is increased significantly. So that right there is stealth mode, and there's an important thing to note for stealth mode that people were calling, I think they were calling the advanced roll or the advanced dodge or something like that. And it has to do with the fact that and this is done with the alternate fire, this is the right click. So if I stand still and right click, he hops back a couple blocks, maybe I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 blocks, and that's cool. But if you're running forward and you do it, you actually stay in place because the 2 movements counteract. If you're running forward and then you hit backwards, you can get a huge dodge out of the way. So one of the things people will often do when they're doing this is they will run up to an enemy that they're going to aggro, they'll swing their sword, and then they'll advance dodge back away. But when you swing your sword, make sure you connect 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I've connected twice. You can tell I've made 2 hits because I have 2 spinning rings around me. And that is the passive that we were talking about. So the passive mentioned that as if you are in... okay, 2 more. Let's get a boss, I guess. If you are in... stealth mode and you do your basic attack, it will consume those 3 rings into shurikens, which you know, throwing stars. So that is sort of okay, well, let's just get 3 shurikens here. Okay, I've got 3 rings. Right click, I'm now invisible. If I left click, I shot 3 shurikens forward. It's as simple as that. They were kind of hard to see, I know. Maybe they're kind of subtle with this costume. Anywho, so that is the basic idea of how you take this guy, you go stealth, and then you have a ranged attack, right? So you can stay out of the line of fire. Now let's talk about the other 2 abilities. The number 1 ability, much like the knight, is a charge. Difference being that this charge, rather than just going really far and doing damage, ensnares... Okay, we're going to need a beefier opponent to actually test that out. It actually ensnares... the enemy, meaning that they can no longer move. So here's a boss down here. Hopefully he won't die in 1 hit. You can see he's stuck with some rings underneath him, and he's not running at me. Okay, got my 3 shurikens. I'll throw them at the chest. I defeated the boss. Okay, so you can see how this guy is kind of like movement speed is good, attack speed is good, because you want to get those shurikens. They do a lot of damage, so you want to get as many of those shurikens up as possible all the time. Go into stealth mode, avoid getting hit and throwing them. But he's kind of a squishier class, right? He doesn't really have any protection abilities at all, actually. So even though he's melee, you don't want to get hit, so that's why the stealth mode is so important. At the same time, you have another ability, your ultimate, which gives you a period of time where you are given nothing but range class. So if I hit number 2, my sword, it's really hard to see, is shooting out these beams. I probably chose a bad costume to show the class, since some of the VFX for these abilities are a little subtle. But that's the basic concept, that you have a period of getting high damaged range attacks in. So while you regen health, maybe you stealth mode out of there by pushing back and rolling, right? You can move pretty quickly if you do it over and over again. Wow, you can just move really quickly. And then once you put some distance between you, maybe throw a shuriken, maybe pop the ultimate, and start firing while you regen your health. Okay, so let's move on in that case to, man, we're gonna do this episode in 2 parts. Let's see, because there's so many of these. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 left. I'm gonna call this here, and we will see tomorrow. I will finish these class guides for you all. I just don't want these videos to go on for too long, and I won't have to do the intro about the Balefire wing giveaways on the stream. Oh, I'm not using them. So we can churn through probably the extra one there. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed it, please remember to leave a like. It really helps me out a bunch, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.